The Logitech G710 Blue. It was nice the first time. Let's see how it stacks up now that I'm older and possibly just a bit wiser. I'm Rio Gion and welcome to Rio Gion Keyboards. This is a plus-size keyboard with extra features such as dedicated volume wheel, media controls, lighting adjustment, Windows lock, and macro recorder. If you are looking for a fully featured keyboard, then this one should be in your shortlist. The ISO layout make it harder to find keycap replacement for if you're into modding your keyboards. Personally, I really dig the font of the keycaps. I know this is a gaming keyboard, but I do love the professional style font. The keyboard does have a glossy plastic on the inner section, which means that the keyboard will collect dust pretty easily, and it can be hard to keep the keyboard in pristine condition. Besides the font, the plus size nature of the keyboard and the blue shell where the macro keys are really screams gaming keyboard. Then again, this has white LED backlighting, which is usually meant for classier keyboards, if that is even a word. I think this is a good middle ground for those that like plus size keyboards and they want their keyboards to look somewhat classy at the same time. So let's address the elephant in the room. To be honest, I got this keyboard again because I remember it being so good when I first got my hand on it, and I came really close to making it my main. At the end of the day, the thing that changed my decision was that the keyboard wasn't RGB. And I was really into RGB keyboards at the time. Since then, I sort of grew out of the RGB phase, and this keyboard really stood out as a keyboard to have because it has some of the features that I really want out of a keyboard. Also, the keyboard does not have floating key design, so this means that the keyboard is harder to clean. It's just due to how close the keys are to the borders. That, and it uses MX Blues, which is one of, if not my favorite switch of them all. If you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed yet, then it's time to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for the latest content. The keyboard uses MX Blue switches, which is one of my favorite switch because the first mechanical keyboard I ever gotten was an MX Blue switch, and that clicky sound is just addicting to listen to. This is the proven switch that is rated for 50mm keystrokes, and there's a good chance that it will last that long. Since this is not a clone switch, you don't need to worry about consistency as much because this switch is coming from a company that has proven themselves to be the ideal switch maker. Then again, the MX RGB Blue is known to have problems such as inconsistency and some of the switches not working properly, so it never hurts to double check. This keyboard has the old design of the light being on top of the switch, so it makes me think that I'm hitting the lights whenever I hit the keys. I seriously hope that this is not true. This keyboard uses Cherry MX stabilizers, which makes the keyboard easier to clean. The reason why is for the Co-Star stabilizers, you have to remove this wire, which can be really annoying to put back once you are done cleaning the keyboard. If you plan on replacing the keycaps, then there are these two little plastic pieces that you have to take out as well with the Co-Star stabilizers. Since this keyboard have Cherry MX stabilizers, you can avoid all of that hassle. Just take off the keycaps when you need to clean your keyboard or replacing keycaps. If you need help taking out the Co-Star stabilizers, I have a link to a video below that like button for you to check out. The downside to the Cherry stabilizers is that they might not feel as precise when pressing the longer keys, but you really don't notice this unless you have the keyboards side by side. This keyboard has the typical thin ABS keycaps that is found in most gaming keyboards. Would I want them to use higher quality keycaps? Of course I do, but the thing is that the market either doesn't know about higher quality keycaps or they don't care for it. But this is alright because these keycaps are not as bad as other keycaps that I have used before. I know I say this a lot, but I really dig the font of the keycaps. The font is actually one of the selling points of the keyboard for me, but I do know that there are people out there that really likes the whole gamer font of other gaming keyboards. Included is a plastic wrist rest that can break pretty easily if you're not careful with it. If you plan on using the wrist rest, then I highly suggest not to move the keyboard so much. If you have a desk setup and your keyboard will mainly stay in one place, then that's great. But if you're like me and your desk is multi-purpose, then just be careful when lifting the keyboard with the wrist rest attached to it. I'm sure that in the past, I have complained so much about the wrist rest being hard plastic, and I gotta admit, it was a whole lot of fun. But now that I talk to more people and see that there's a good number of you that actually like the plastic wrist rest, I'm not going to complain as much as I did before. So, as a friendly reminder, the wrist rest is flimsy and can easily be broken if you're not too careful with it. The flip-up feet does not have rubber on them, so the keyboard will move during heavy typing and gaming sessions. When the keyboard isn't angled upwards, the rubber pads on the board does a really good job with keeping the board planted. You also get cable management slots, but not for the keyboard. These slots are leading towards headphone cables, and the wrist rest has a small opening just in case you want to route your headphones and use the wrist rest at the same time. The keyboard does have USB pass-through, which I really like because I tend to use the pass-through a lot. I wish if more keyboards have USB pass-throughs because there are some keyboards I would really like to use as my daily driver, but not having a USB pass-through is a deal breaker for me. There is cable management Velcro, which is a thoughtful inclusion because it makes it easier to wrap the cables when I am no longer using the keyboard. The cable is rubber and the USB is silver tip, which is the more popular choice now because I'm starting to think people are getting sick of braided cables and gold-plated USB. The keyboard is plug and play for the most part unless you want to set macros, then you would want to download the software. I didn't say need because you can set up the macros by holding the macro record button, then set your macros on the G keys. From the software I noticed that you can only set macros on the G keys, which is both good and bad because on the one hand you tend to use macro features on the bank of macro key anyways. On the other hand, if you want to set macro elsewhere, then you can't. The software is basic because most of the things you will want to do is already on the keyboard, such as adjust lighting settings, turning on game mode which disable the Windows key. I think with a software update you could probably set macros on every single key, but there has to be some kind of demand for this feature in the first place. Since this is an older keyboard, I don't think people would necessarily care for a software update as much. If you plan on buying this keyboard, then I guess you are simply out of luck for software updates. Unless you share this video and have enough people watching it to the point where someone from Logitech knows about this, then there might be hope for the software after all. The typing experience is the keyboard's main selling point because the MX Blue has not let me down with this keyboard. The keystrokes are buttery smooth and I do feel like I'm gliding through the keyboard rather than stomping on it. The clicking sound is extremely satisfying to listen to and I am constantly finding excuses to type on this keyboard. This keyboard was as good as I remember it when it comes to the typing experience, and I will put a link to my earlier review down below so you guys can see how much I have grown as a keyboard reviewer. To me, the regular MX Blue have this sort of great balance between weight and sound. It's heavy to the point where I know I press the key and the sound is just symphony to the ears. For MMO gamers and video editors, if you plan on using only the G keys as your macro keys, then this keyboard is a great purchase. If you mainly play FPS, then I would suggest getting something with red switches. But if you just love the click like me, then this is a good keyboard to scratch that itch. If you are an RTS gamer, then there might be some usage out of those G keys, but if you really need to double tap quickly or don't want to make too many mistakes, then go with the red or black switches. Pricing is always subject to change, but you can expect to find this keyboard between the low 80s to the low 100s, which might be asking a bit much at this point in the mechanical keyboard game. But if you want a plus side keyboard with authentic MX switches and you love white backlighting, then this one should be on your shortlist. Comment down below and let me know, would you buy this keyboard? If you made it this far and you haven't subscribed yet, then it's time to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to become part of the mighty notification squad. As always, have an awesome day.